In this video, I present practical solutions to the two most critical shortcomings of auditing. First, I will compile the essence of bookkeeping, because without understanding how bookkeeping functions, reasonable assurance cannot be provided. Then I will also demonstrate how the professional content of bookkeeping makes back measurement possible. Moreover, with this method, evidence collection itself becomes measurable and verifiable, in stark contrast to the current system, where nothing is measurable and nothing is verifiable. One more thing. This video has a predecessor as well. I strongly recommend watching it too, because certain statements I make here will only become fully understandable in light of that one. I will place the link to the video in the description. Let us begin with the most important, compiling the professional content. First, I need to import the entire bookkeeping database. But now I do not wish to distract your attention with the details of how to download it, because we have developed several methods for obtaining the data. Therefore, I will speak about this and about using the program in a separate video. I will also place the link to that video in the description so you can watch later. Here I show you the file containing the data. And with this button I import the data. Done. The appearance of the general ledger extract signals successful import. However, in the background we have not only loaded the data, the professional content has also been compiled. Let us examine precisely what happened. I have arranged the two approaches one beneath the other for you. Up here you see the journals. These are the bookkeeping data exactly as we received them. Down below, I have opened the window presenting the professional content. I call this professional content because here, alongside the general ledger number, the bookkeeping method itself is also precisely visible. This account is debited against that one. If you look at the first two rows of the journal, they are exactly identical to the professional content below. These two rows with these, this one with that, and so on. Thus, parallel to that import, we also compiled the professional content. One more thing I would like to say regarding this professional content. If I drag this image slider, then you can see the data in even greater detail. Here's the general ledger number, next to it the description, and finally the amount is visible. You have surely noticed this step structure, as well as the fact that the account numbers in column F10 are in different colors. I apply this different color, which also serves as a vertical axis, to illustrate the perspectives of the economic events. Here in the first row, I view the economic events from the perspective of the accounting starting with 1. Here in the next row, I view the very same from the perspective of the accounting starting with 5. With this approach, therefore, I illustrate the various viewpoints of the very same content. Now I pull the slider back. And I also want to show that the two item numbers differ from each other. This is because bookkeeping items can be further subdivided by general ledger accounts. For example, the same cost can be booked to additional segments. Now I come here down to the bottom of the file. Well, here you can see that voucher 999 has 6 rows, while down here only 3. The difference is merely that up here the accounting starts with 1, is divided into 3 parts. But the professional content's perspective, however, all this is just 1 row. Here the account starting with 4 appears twice, down below only once, and the amount is naturally accumulated. This is so because, from a professional standpoint, it is irrelevant as to how many dimensions an item is booked to. Now let me quickly show how to call up these views. I close both windows and return to the main window. If you select a row, or even several at once, you need to call the views here in the middle. The two professional contents will open on the tab of the selected account number. The bookkeeping journal, on the other hand, will contain the entire bookkeeping. Earlier we reached the professional content, from which we can now compile the essence of bookkeeping. I have split the screen again. At the top you see the itemized transactions, below the essence of the bookkeeping, which we have named the bookkeeping architecture map. Here in the first row you see that there are 137 such transactions. Up here I simply enter that the debit is 1001 then hit enter to filter the transactions starting thus. Here too there are 137 such items. If I sum the amounts, it is 4,903,501, exactly as down here. Now let us filter when the same general ledger number is credited. You see there are 3 items, exactly as down here. Below, therefore, you see aggregated information, which is similar to the general ledger extract. Only here, the aggregation is not by general ledger numbers, but by transactions. And before the transactions, you can also see an item number to thereby highlight outlier or non-typical items, as well as to see which were the dominant events. Now, I enlarged the essence of bookkeeping for you so you can see the whole. I suppose at first glance you do not even know how to interpret what you see. I understand, since this is a higher level aggregated information to which you are not accustomed. At the same time, consider that you must grapple with 2 things at once. Since this is a new imaging tool, you must first familiarize yourself with its use as well. Secondly, until now you could only move at the item level. You looked at an invoice and searched for the corresponding bookkeeping or vice versa. Now suddenly you see the big picture, to which you are not accustomed. This is like when a doctor examines your abdomen with ultrasound. You have surely had such an examination, or at least you can imagine it. On the moderner, you can see various patches, lighter ones and darker ones too, about which you know only that these are your internal organs. In contrast to you, however, the doctor already knows how to use this tool. He knows precisely what he sees. You will reach this point too. For this, naturally, a little practice will be needed, and soon you too will understand this big picture. But let us linger a bit longer with the medical analogy. Among the patches on the monitor, until now you have only seen a few points. These points were the randomly selected samples until now. How many points might be involved in a single examination? 50, 100, or perhaps just a little more than that? Just think. From the perspective of the big picture, what is it worth if you only see a few points of the whole? What is this approach worth? Almost nothing, for it is a very feeble attempt. Sampling is a primitive approach lagging light years behind the demands of the digital age. Therefore, it no longer makes sense to support your opinion with sampling, because from this viewpoint, it is clearly visible what it is worth. For reasonable assurance, therefore, modern imaging tools are needed, so that instead of random glimpses, you can also get an overview of the bookkeeping system. And at this point, I have good news right away. Until now, auditors could not accumulate usable practical knowledge. I mean that if someone encountered some fraud, they could not share the specific case with others, to be aware of it. For client data cannot be made public. The essence compiled from bookkeeping, however, contains anonymous information. If you want to be even surer in your work, make a backup to Excel, like this. Then add 1 foreign to the amount. And done. Now we are talking about completely anonymous information. Your own universities can finally develop a precise script for auditing with case studies, with examples of what to pay attention to, what problems can arise from what. I suppose you understand. Now let us return to this example, and I will show you what to pay attention to, how to discover its use. First, I want to say that I'm deliberately showing you a small bookkeeping extract only with a few items. This is necessary so that I remain followable. From the perspective of evaluating the big picture, the most important question is, what does a company do? Because precisely that must appear here, like a fingerprint. If, for example, this is an online store, then sales cannot occur in cash, because there are no cash registers. In this section, you see the booking of sales. Here, every sale occurred with payable value-added tax. Down here, however, there are a few items where you do not see value-added tax on the sales. What could be the reason for this? Is the tax law misinterpreted? Or is there indeed something that must be booked this way? Well, you need to find the answers to these questions. But remaining with the same, it could simply be that the client does not book items consistently. Bookkeeping provides very broad frameworks. The same event can be booked in very many ways. Precisely for this reason, you will encounter a great deal of creative bookkeeping, part of which serves fraud, and part of which will truly be just an interesting approach. But let us look at one very important connection. Here you see that something was booked against compensation. This is typically a case where the connections must also be seen. Only through this can you follow what happens. Now I come to the main screen and select this compensation account. Here in the first row, the item we want to follow is visible. Since this is a credit item on the customer, it behaves like a settlement. In the last row, however, you see that it became a cost. I emphasize that here too the example is deliberately simple because I only want to show what to pay attention to. And now I want to attune your thinking even better to this new information. Now I open another enterprise for you. Needless to say, this too is very simple bookkeeping. Perhaps you will not even encounter such a simple example in practice, but it's certainly good for showing the essence. Here too I open the customers. Then I press the button, which supplements this file with the previous year. This on the left is the previous year, this is the current year. If you look more closely, here now the general ledger numbers have no descriptions, so you may not understand everything. However, when examining your client's bookkeeping with the same approach, you will already understand because you know those account numbers. With this approach, you can compare what appears here and why the same is not in the following year, first three rows. Understanding these differences will encourage you to see behind things. Naturally, it is also worth pondering the values. Here it books something, 146 item row, and in the current year immediately reverses it. And finally, I want to show that essence into which you have never seen before. Though you should have. I go back to the previous company. Now let us open this bank. If you go through this row by row, you will see from what and how much money the enterprise earned, and on what it is spent on, and how much. And if you also place the previous year next to it, you will even see more. However, I will not show this here because I do not have the previous year for the enterprise. As a conclusion, just one more thought. With the aggregated approach, therefore, you can review the entire bookkeeping, and if there are irregular bookings, you will definitely see this. Just think what a giant leap forward it is if your opinion is supported by the fact you have found every single item of irregular booking, and they were corrected. Acquiring knowledge of the professional content of the bookkeeping and establishing daily routine, I suppose, will give you enough tasks. At the same time, I would like to provide just a quick glimpse into the future as well. I want to show how back measurement can be started. The next development will support this method in a program way. First, I open the customers in this aggregated view. Here I select those rows that contain invoice-related bookings. Right-click to add these events to the filter. Then I open the filter and here are the selected events. Now I press the filter button and the program searches for the items. I export these to Excel. I press the Excel button and it has copied the data. I will need these columns. Ctrl+C and I paste this into a new worksheet. Here on this worksheet, I have already pasted the data from the invoicing program. Only those are needed from which you can identify the items. I take it, come here to the transaction worksheet, and paste the items here. I delete the columns I do not need. And then I can come back to this Invoice tab and press the Data menu item. Within it, choose the From Table option. The program has selected the entire file. I say yes. This is what I need and it has put the data here. Now I take it and step back with the Close and Load menu item. Then I come here to the Transaction worksheet. Here only this one column is selected, so I click here. And then again Data, from Table. So it selected the entire file and OK can come. And now I have two worksheets. I stand on the first one, press this Merge Queries option. Down here I select this Table 3. Now I hold down the Control key and select the invoice number, then afterward the amount. See? These little numbers appeared. They show the order in which the two files will be linked. Now down here too, I select the invoice number. Then I drag the slider and also select the amount. Then down here I say Full Outer. And then I can press the OK button, and the program brings in the next column. I can expand the next column here, and here I can select what I need. I request all of them, and if you look, it has already linked the two files quite well, but we can still improve on it a bit. Now here, choose the Add Column menu item, then this Custom option, and we start writing a function. We should do exactly like this, but meanwhile I'll explain what is happening. I give it a condition. If this partner, here I double-click to bring in the column name, is not equal to null, then becomes a then this partner comes. So if the partner is not equal to null, so it is filled, then the partner comes. If not, I type else, then comes the other partner, so the partner name appearing in the bookkeeping. I double-click to bring it in, and OK becomes active immediately, and it inserts this function into the last column. Now I come back to the Home tab, choose the Close, and load menu items. And I return to the first table, then close this here because it is no longer needed. Now we put the sorting into the last column, so I come to Data menu item. Sort can come, and here I select this Custom option. Now it has sorted the entire file accordingly, but there are still columns here that I narrow so it can be seen better. A bit more here and the amounts too. Good. If you look now, it has aligned row by row the bookkeeping with the invoices. Here from column F to the left, you can see the invoices. These we read in from the invoicing system. To the right, you see the bookkeeping data starting with the bookkeeping identifier. If you see a complete row, it means this invoice is linked to this bookkeeping. Here in the first three cases, however, there is no connection, so there is no such item among the invoices that is booked here. The same, of course, is true the other way around. Here's an invoice for which it did not find the bookkeeping. And here, let me show you one more interesting thing. At 141, you see that I was able to link to both bookkeeping item with identifier 1266 and the one with 1392, because the invoice number was entered for both, and the amounts are also identical. In such cases, the program shows the variations. Naturally, there's only one invoice 141 among the invoices. I will filter it out for you right now. I performed the filtering here. Okay, so there is only a single invoice, of course. In the bookkeeping, however, the same invoice number appears in two bookkeeping rows. That is precisely why the program shows the variations, and obviously in such cases you have to interpret what to take into account. Regarding this, I would also like to say that what I showed works like this in Office 365, but the same is probably solvable in other versions too. Furthermore, let me note that this is what I was talking about when I said 100% back measurements. Now with engineering precision, we know what is not booked, as well as what bookkeeping items have no associated invoice. And in the previous video regarding this, I said that now you can lean back, for the technology worked in your stead. You just have to give the statement back to the bookkeeper and wait for it to be corrected. You cannot possibly be in a better position than this. Finally, I'd like to mention that the back measurement is made possible by the fact that, based on professional content, you can search for anything in the bookkeeping. From the other side, today every piece of data is related to bookkeeping. Payrolls, inventories, tax accounts, etc. is generated by computer. You only need to query the data from these, either itemized or aggregated, and thus comparison with the bookkeeping data becomes possible. With our next developments, we will make all this automated for you, so that you can achieve the same result in a program way as well. Thank you for watching.